Dear student, welcome to Gyan Kiran. This is Kiran, and in this session we are discussing about decomposition reactions. Decomposition reaction is nothing but it is a reaction in which what happens, one reactant breaks down into two or more products. Here one reactant it breaks down and leads to the formation of two or more products. Generally we can represent decomposition reaction like they here AB reactants are there. These reactants break down and results in the formation of the products like A and B. Likewise, if we consider here one example like carbon monoxide, the carbon monoxide breaks down into its constituent products like carbon and oxygen. And if we consider the compound calcium hydroxide, it breaks down into calcium oxide and water. This is how decomposition reaction takes place. Decomposition reaction means in which one reactant breaks down into two or more products. Decomposition reaction and its types. Dear student, these are the reactions in which single reactant breaks down to give simple products. Here a single reactant it splits and gives rise to simple products. In this decomposition reaction, a compound splits into two or more substances. If we consider the compound as a reactant in which what happens, the compound splits into two or more substances. This is what is known as decomposition reaction. Again, in decomposition reaction we will find different types. The first one is thermal decomposition, second one is electrolytic decomposition, and followed by photolytic decomposition. Thermal decomposition is a type of decomposition reaction. Thermal decomposition is a chemical reaction that happens a compound breaks down when heated. Here the heat plays very important role. In this thermal decomposition reaction what happens, when heat is given to a compound it splits into simple products. This is what is known as thermal decomposition reaction. Electrolytic decomposition. In these reactions, energy in the form of an electric current is used to break down the compounds into simpler substances. Dear student, here the role of electricity is very important. In this, electric current is used to break down the compounds into simpler substances or simpler products. This is what is known as electrolytic decomposition. Photolytic decomposition. This is a type of decomposition reaction in which the reactant will break down just by the absorption of the photons. Here, when the reactants are exposed to the light, reactants divides or break down to gives rise to simple products, and hence the light is absorbed by the reactants in the form of the photons. So this type of reaction is known as photolytic decomposition. Endothermic decomposition reaction. A reaction in which energy is absorbed is known as endothermic reaction. Dear student, most of the decomposition reactions acts as endothermic reactions because in which the heat is absorbed and the reactants in presence of heat split down into simple forms, simple products, and hence the decomposition reactions also considered as endothermic decomposition reactions. Example 1. Decomposition of ferrous sulfate. Dear student, in this experiment, we will study decomposition of ferrous sulfate. You have to take 2 gram of ferrous sulfate in a dry boiling tube. In a dry boiling tube, you have to take ferrous sulfate, heat the tube, and the color of the ferrous sulfate changes. And at the same time, a characteristic odor of burning sulfur emitted out. So when we heat the ferrous sulfate, it contains water molecule. These water molecules are given out. When ferrous sulfate heated, it loses water and produces ferric oxide, sulfur oxide, and sulfur trioxide, and it decomposes into sulfur oxide, sulfur trioxide. Dear student, here what happens? The crystalline of the ferrous sulfate, when heated, it loses its water content and becomes anhydrous ferrous sulfate. This anhydrous ferrous sulfate, on further heating, it produces ferric oxide, sulfur dioxide, and SO3. And hence, here in this reaction, one compound gives rise to 3 products. That is why it is a decomposition reaction. Dear student, whenever carrying this experiment, you have to take some precautionary measures. Do not point the mouth of the boiling tube at your neighbors or yourself. See here, precautionary measure is do not point the mouth of boiling tube at your neighbors or yourself. Then here what happens in this experiment, waft gases emitted out. Here waft gases emitted out from ferrous sulfate on heating. Waft gases emitted out towards your nose gently. So holding the tube at distance is better. You have to hold the tube at a distance. The gases SO2 and SO3, that is sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide, are very harmful. So do not take deep breath when smelling the odor of the gases. Always use test tube holder while heating the test tube. These precautionary measures you have to take. Dear student, this is all of about decomposition of ferrous sulfate. Example 2. Dear student, in example 2, we will discuss on decomposition of calcium carbonate. This reaction mainly takes place in presence of heat. Here what happens? Due to the effect of heat, calcium carbonate decomposes into calcium oxide. It is also known as quicklime and carbon dioxide. So here what happens? Because of this effect of heat, calcium carbonate decomposes and produces products like calcium oxide, quicklime, and carbon dioxide. And the calcium oxide which is produced in this reaction is also used for manufacture of cement. So this reaction mainly carried by the heat, and hence it is known as thermal decomposition. Dear student, here what happens? A calcium carbonate, it decomposes due to the effect of heat and produces calcium oxide, that is quicklime, and sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. So this reaction mainly takes place due to the effect of heat, and hence it is considered as thermal decomposition. Dear student, this is another example for thermal decomposition. Here you have to take 2 gram of lead nitrate in a test tube. 2 gram of lead nitrate is taken in a test tube and it is heated over the flame. When heated, lead nitrate gives rise to nitrogen dioxide. Here, when lead nitrate heated in the test tube, when lead nitrate powder is heated in a test tube, it gives nitrogen dioxide. So here what happens in this reaction, lead nitrate, it decomposes due to the effect of heat and produces lead oxide and nitrogen dioxide and oxygen. In this reaction, a compound gives rise to three products due to the effect of heat, and hence it is an example for thermal decomposition. Example 4. Electrolysis of water. Dear student, electrolysis of water is a process in which water decomposes into hydrogen and oxygen by using electricity. Here in this experiment we will study the electrolysis of water. We have to arrange the experiment in this way. At the base of the plastic mug, drill 2 holes and fit rubber stoppers. So here at the bottom of the mug we have to make a hole by using drills. Connect electrodes to a 6-volt battery. So here after fixing the electrodes, these electrodes must have to be connected to the 6-volt battery. Fill the mug with water such that the electrodes are immersed. So here you have to fill the mug with water so that these electrodes are submerged into the water, and then you have to add a few drops of H2SO4, that is dilute H2SO4, to the water. Then you have to take 2 test tubes filled with water and you have to put those test tubes invertedly over the electrodes. So here the test tubes filled with water are placed invertedly on 2 electrodes like anode and cathode. We have to pass the current. Then what happens? Bubbles are formed at electrodes by displacing water in test tubes. So here the bubbles are formed by displacing water within the test tube. At cathode, double amount of gas is collected when compared with anode, because during the breakdown of water, 2H molecule is released with one oxygen molecule. At cathode, 2 molecules of hydrogen are continuously collected, and hence what happens in this experiment, water undergoes decomposition and produces 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen. Example 5, that is photolytic decomposition. What is photolytic decomposition? In this type of decomposition, the reactants undergo decomposition in presence of light and break down into respective products. So here in this experiment, you have to take 2 gram of silver chloride in a china dish. Then you have to place china dish consisting of silver chloride in a sunlight for few days. Then what happens? White color of the silver chloride turns gray. This kind of change in color is mainly due to the decomposition of silver chloride into silver and chlorine. So here what happens? Silver chloride decomposes under sunlight and produces silver and chlorine respectively. So here this whole reaction takes place in presence of sunlight, and hence this reaction is known as photolytic decomposition.